Coming up on Arirang News, South Korean chipmaker SK Hynix agrees to buy Intel's NAND memory business for around $9 billion. The deal will make SK Hynix the world's second biggest player in the NAND market. Fewer than 100 COVID-19 cases reported in South Korea for a fifth day in a row. Cluster infections persist in the capital, but not the major new wave some had feared after the recent holidays. And a leading American expert predicts that the darkest days of the pandemic globally are yet to come, and the next 6 to 12 weeks will be critical to stopping it. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea reported 58 additional cases of COVID-19 on Tuesday. The fifth day cases have been fewer than 100. Kim Hyun-sung reports.
South Korea saw 58 new COVID-19 cases on Tuesday. The number of confirmed cases has now been below 100 for 5 straight days. Of those 58 cases, 41 were locally transmitted, while 17 were from overseas. The cases are concentrated in the capital area, with 11 from Seoul and 22 from Gyeonggi-do province. There has not yet been a spike in numbers since social distancing measures were lowered to level 1 last week. But chain infections sprouting from rehabilitation hospitals and nursing homes still remain a concern. The affected facilities have isolated those infected, but have still been seeing several more cases. On Monday, SRC Rehabilitation Hospital in Gyeonggi-do province reported 10 additional COVID-19 patients, bringing the total to 61. There were also 14 more cases on Sunday at a nursing home in Busan, taking the total to 73. And a psychiatric hospital in Dobong-gu district of Seoul had 2 more cases on Monday, taking it to 67 cases overall. With outdoor activity expected to increase as people head to scenic areas to see the autumn leaves, health authorities are asking people not to be complacent. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
A leading American expert on infectious diseases has warned that the next 3 months could be the darkest of the entire pandemic. He's also predicting that a meaningful vaccine won't be available until the latter half of next year. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The next 6 to 12 weeks in the U.S. may be one of the most critical periods in the fight against COVID-19. This, according to Michael Osterholm, director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota. Speaking to NBC's Meet the Press over the weekend, the infectious disease expert said the next 3 months will be the darkest of the entire pandemic, noting that despite some progress, vaccines will not become available in any meaningful way until early to the third quarter of next year. Osterholm added that even with the vaccine, half of the U.S. population is skeptical of even taking it. He says the biggest problem isn't messaging, as Americans don't know what information to believe. He called for the need to get a message to the public that reflects the science and reflects reality. The expert also cited too many different voices in the U.S. public health response, calling for the need for one voice. Osterholm is one of many health experts who have warned the COVID-19 pandemic would worsen in the fall and winter months. According to data from Johns Hopkins University, the U.S. has seen more than 8.1 million cases and at least 219,000 deaths. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The countries chosen by Russia to produce its COVID-19 vaccine, dubbed Sputnik V, reportedly include South Korea. According to the Russian news agency TASS, the CEO of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, which is providing the money for the vaccine's development, said it will be manufactured in India, Brazil, South Korea, and China. He was speaking in a webinar on Russia's cooperation with South American countries, whom he said will be able to get the vaccine as soon as December. As for supplies to South Korea, he told local media last month that negotiations are in their final stages. A survey in Japan suggests that 50% of the country oppose the government's plan to release radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear plant into the ocean. Those in favor of the plan accounted for 41% of respondents, and 9% had no opinion. But the plan certainly has Japan's neighbors concerned. Yoon Jung-min reports.
A recent survey conducted by the local daily Yomiuri Shimbun shows about 50% of citizens in Japan are against their government's plan to discharge radioactive water from the tsunami-wrecked Fukushima nuclear plant into the sea. The survey was conducted on over 1,000 eligible voters across Japan, as well as local governments. Fishing industries in the northeastern prefecture of Fukushima are also opposed to the idea. Seoul's foreign ministry has repeatedly voiced its concerns over such a plan, adding it will closely monitor developments and take action with the international community if necessary. Beijing has also called on Tokyo to make a decision carefully after negotiating with its neighbors. It pointed out that radioactive material from the 2011 tsunami and earthquake has already been discharged, which poses a grave threat to the marine environment and human health. The Japanese government is likely to officially announce its discharge plan early next week.
We would like to deepen the discussion within the government and want to responsibly make a decision at an appropriate time.
If confirmed, the disposal is likely to begin from October 2022. Some experts say there aren't many realistic measures to prevent Japan from discharging the contaminated water. Sources say the South Korean government is currently focused on pressuring Japan to discharge it transparently and safely, so the international community can at the least feel less concerned, rather than seeking ways to make Tokyo completely withdraw its plan. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Big news today in the memory chip business. South Korean chipmaker SK Hynix is going to buy Intel's NAND memory chip unit in a deal worth about $9 billion. This will make SK number 2 in the global NAND market. Ji-young has the details.
South Korea's second-largest chipmaker, SK Hynix, is buying U.S. tech giant Intel's memory chip unit for over $9 billion. SK Hynix said on Tuesday that it has signed an all-cash deal, which would make it the world's number 2 NAND flash chip manufacturer with around 20% of the market share. NAND flash memory chips are primarily used to store data in devices including smartphones, cameras, and data center servers. The deal includes Intel's solid-state drive or SSD business, as well as its NAND memory chip and wafer business and its production facility in Dalian, China. The U.S. semiconductor producer has been looking to get out of the business mainly due to sagging prices for flash memory, so it can focus on its core business of producing non-memory chips. But Intel will be keeping its Optane memory chip division, a smaller business which taps into advanced technology. The acquisition will happen in stages, and the final takeover is expected to be completed in 2025.
Intel's NAND flash technology has been jointly developed by Intel and Micron, so it has outstanding features. When merged with SK Hynix's technology, synergy will be created, which can propel SK Hynix to catch up with its competitor Samsung.
He added that the acquisition of the factory in Dalian will expand SK Hynix's market share in the NAND flash business. SK Hynix has been prospering amid COVID-19 as online activity has skyrocketed. It was the fourth largest NAND flash producer with an 11.7% market revenue share in the second quarter of 2020, according to market researcher TrendForce, while Intel was ranked 6th with about 11.5% of market revenue share. SK Hynix also is the world's second largest supplier in the DRAM business. Ji-young, Arirang News.
It's been found that the world's second fastest 5G network is South Korea's, behind only Saudi Arabia. According to UK mobile analytics company OpenSignal, South Korea's 5G speed clocked in at 336.1 megabits a second, which is 30% faster than it was just 6 months ago. It's around 42 megabits slower than Saudi Arabia's. As for the availability of 5G, South Korea ranked 5th with 22.2% coverage. Saudi Arabia was at 37% and Kuwait at just under 28%. In a first for a South Korean company, the brand value of Samsung Electronics has risen to fifth highest in the world. According to market consultants Interbrand, in their top 100 global brands list, Samsung's brand had a value of $62.3 billion. 20 years ago, when Interbrand first published the list, Samsung was at 43rd place, but its value since then has increased 12-fold. The top 4 spots were held by American tech giants, Apple topping the list, followed by Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. Meanwhile, the brand value of Hyundai Motor was 5th highest among the world's automakers, largely thanks to its aggressive investment in future mobility, like self-driving cars. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, good to have you back on.
Good afternoon.
Well, a big pullback on Wall Street overnight, new stimulus before Election Day looking less and less likely. The Dow losing almost 1.5%, the S&P a little more than that. What's the story today in the global markets?
Yes, as you said, U.S. market kind of went down quite significantly. If you look at Dow Jones was down 1.4%, S&P 500 was down 1.6%, NASDAQ was down 1.7%. At the beginning of trading day, it did quite okay because there was a possibility of the agreement on the stimulus package between the ruling party and the opposition party. But as later on the day passed, the agreement really did not come through, and there's a kind of time deadline of 48 hours, which will be on the next 24 hours, that if the agreement doesn't go through, then a possibility that this deal is not going to go through until the actual election is finished. Election is in 2 weeks, and obviously we need some positive news in order for the market to climb up from the current level. And if you look at the U.S. dollar, it seems to be under pressure continuously. It's running around 93 level territories because of this continuation of talk about the stimulus negotiation, and the balance sheet, the budget deficit remains to continue to be very high. However, though, the U.S. futures market right now seems to be showing some recovery because the chance of this policy actually going through might be actually happening before the election. We're not sure. So clearly there's a huge amount of uncertainty in regards to the fiscal policy boosting measures. And also there's uncertainty in regards to the COVID-19 vaccine, as well as the related recovery right now. If you look at the economic recovery trend for U.S., people say a K-shaped recovery where the high-income brackets are showing clearly significant recovery, whereas the low-income brackets are not doing well with the huge unemployment ratios. All being said, U.S. market should be volatile until probably the election period is ended.
Well, it was certainly volatile today in the Korean markets, quite a bit lower at midday, but ending higher. Tell us about that and what was driving the trade here in Seoul.
Right. At the beginning of today, with the U.S. market being very poor, and also the news of Hyundai Motors deciding to provide provisions of 3.6 trillion won worth of provision regard to the engine problems, that has shown a significant correction for the Korean market because there's continuation of uncertainty in regards to the corporate governance stance. If you look at past histories, the owners, the major shareholders, so-called chaebol owners, all tends to push down the share prices of stocks that they less owned, and then push up the stock prices that they own most, which is Hyundai Globus. And that kind of share price movement is actually really negative in terms of the sentiment in regards to the corporate governance. That has resulted into Kospi doing quite poorly, but towards the end of later afternoon, potential for the capital gains tax, the requirement, might not go down to 300 million won from the current 1 billion won. So if that's the case, then the uncertainty can actually be removed, and that Kospi having a very cheap valuation and the fundamentals being very strong due to a quite stable economic growth rate relative to other countries, we could see the stock prices moving up higher until the probably end of first quarter next year. So right now, the reason why Kospi been quite weak in the past several weeks was because of all this about corporate governance issue, as well as the regulation issues. But if those regulation issues and corporate governance issues are moving in a positive direction, then of course the equity market can recover based on the fundamentals. And currently the fundamentals seems to be quite reasonably good.
Well, Mr. Yu, we're almost out of time, but you mentioned the weakening dollar index. Today we saw the Korean won fall below 11.40 against the U.S. dollar. First time that's happened in a year and a half. What's happening with the exchange rate?
Right. I mean, if you look at the exchange rate, exchange rate going up to 1,200 was kind of unreasonable, given the fact that Korea having showing very strong economic, relatively better economic growth rate to the other countries. On top of that, the government bonds or government debt to GDP ratios remains to be one of the lowest amongst all the countries, and the budget deficit is not that significant relative to any other countries. So therefore, we think that the currency moving in such direction is reasonable. And if that's the case, then the foreign direct investment into Korea will continue to happen. So, and therefore, the currency movement is not going to be any towards depreciation, but rather appreciation.
Got it. All right, we'll have to leave it there for today, Mr. Yu. Thanks so much for sharing your insights.
Thank you very much.
That does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.